Since A New Hope, we've known that the guns on Star Wars ships have a limited range.
It would be as well to let it go. It's too far out of range.
Not for long.
This is because, despite their name, Star Wars weapons use blaster bolts, high energy particles contained within a field. Even in a vacuum, a blaster bolt's energy is lost over time, likely due to radiated heat and light. This gives it a range of effectiveness limited by various factors, including available energy and the size of the weapon. Today, we're going to try and take the best guess at a realistic effective turbolaser range. In other words, the distance that one capital ship can hit another with its powerful weapons and still do damage. As a note, and I do think I have to say this, discussions about ship or weapon strengths often become highly competitive, with people wanting their favorite universe to be the most powerful. That leads to a strict adherence to, or even cherry picking of, obscure lore, to the detriment of common sense. For example, if a Star Wars card game in 1980 came out which gave turbolasers a range of 100 feet, we wouldn't follow that despite all the evidence to the contrary. Also worth noting is that trying to apply science to what we see on screen in order to guess distance or turbolaser strength or whatever just doesn't make any sense. It's dubious at best, even in a grounded film, but Star Wars is highly stylized and the universe has physics independent of ours. And this sort of thing has led people to say that the Death Star 2 is 900 kilometers in diameter, when that's not the case within the lore. Anyway, back on topic. And I think the best way to evaluate range is by looking at the expanded universe. In the X-Wing novels, for example, we often see fighters moving within a kilometer distance to engage enemies. That being said, the small laser cannons on X-Wings I don't think are representative of capital ship grade turbolasers. Equally absurd is the assertion in the Revenge of the Sith cross-section that a Venator can hit a target 10 light minutes away. Frankly, that's beyond ridiculous. Let's try to establish an upper limit, and thankfully I've been reading the new Jedi Order, and we get the following quote in Conquest, which to me at least feels representative of how the EU treated the topic. Hyperspace jump detected. 12 vessels have arrived. Distance 100,000 kilometers. Sith spit, Anakin muttered, bringing his sensors to bear. They weren't Yuzon Vong ships, he saw immediately. Just a motley collection of E-Wings, transports, and corvettes. They were too far away to hit him. Soon, they wouldn't be. So 100,000 kilometers is clearly outside the range, or at least the effective range, of turbolasers. However, is that the true upper limit? No, I don't think so. I think it's actually significantly less. In the book Death Star, as the Fortressa attacks the station, we get the following quote: 2,209 kilometers, not an easy target. In the Revenge of the Sith novelization, we get the vast semisphere of the wall bloomed with battle, sophisticated sensor algorithms compressed the combat that sprawled throughout the galactic capital's orbit to a view the naked eye could enjoy. Cruisers hundreds of kilometers apart, exchanging fire at near light speed. Then in Return of the Jedi, we get the Rebel fleet within visual range of the massed Imperial fleet, but neither of the two firing on each other. This could be because of Palpatine's order to not attack, but I always took that as an order not to move onto the fleet within range, instead moving in to prevent escape if necessary. On the other hand, we know that orbital bombardments are common, and for that, ships would have to be able to hit a target perhaps even tens of thousands of kilometers away. How do we reconcile it all? Well, here's my opinion. But first, let's talk about the difference between maximum and effective range. Effective range is the distance that you can shoot at the enemy, expect to hit them, and do some damage. Maximum range is the theoretical distance that a turbolaser or any weapon can travel. Or at least that's how I've defined it. Based on everything I've read and how space battles are portrayed in the movies and expanded universe, I believe that ships usually fight far within visual range. And I think a medium engagement would be at about 100 kilometers with a longer one at under 1,000. Given that turbolasers are normally controlled and fired by organic gunners, I don't think there are too many instances where capital ships could expect to hit other capital ships at distances over 1,000 kilometers. The Death Star did it, of course, with the Lucrehulk, but I believe because the Lucrehulk book is a relatively slow and large ship, and the Death Star uses unique technology within its super laser that an ordinary ship in ordinary situations would have a difficult time actually hitting anything. That being said, I think turbolasers maintain their power beyond this range, which is why fleets can bombard planets from over 10,000 kilometers away. For a precise bombardment, however, where you actually want to take out specific structures, I think you'd need to be much closer to the planet's surface. When aiming at something small, however, like a fighter, freighter, or corvette, it's my opinion that the effective range would drop quite significantly, maybe even below 50 kilometers, or far less. So a typical engagement range of about 100 kilometers, a maximum engagement range for ordinary capital ships of perhaps a couple of thousand kilometers, with exceptions on either side, depending on whether the target is especially small or especially large and slow. Of course, it's almost impossible to come up with a range that explains every possible feat or presentation of warfare in Star Wars EU. It's just not possible. Star Wars is too inconsistent and there's too much content, especially in Legends. However, I think these numbers I've given best represent the spirit of warfare and the majority of feats that we've seen. Sure, you can handwave some of the combat within the movies away as just a visual representation and not accurate to the real lore, but Star Wars fights are never described as being beyond visual range, for example, so I think my numbers make sense. They're also in line with the Thrawn trilogy, which served as the basis for how things work in not only the Star Wars EU, but really the deep parts of Star Wars lore generally. And Zahn describes engagements in dozens of kilometers generally, sometimes longer. In Choices of One, for example, the Chimera is pursuing a smaller ship 80 kilometers away, and it has to, and I quote, throw power to its sublight engines in order to close the distance and get into the turbolaser's effective range a little sooner. This also makes sense with what we saw in The Last Jedi. The turbolasers are technically capable of hitting the Raddus, however, the ship is outside of their effective range, meaning that the shots have lost so much power that they're not really doing any significant damage to the shield. Speaking of The Last Jedi, of course, even in Legends, longer range turbolasers exist, on the Megador for example, which exist solely to outrange the guns on other capital ships. But this has all just been my thoughts and my opinion. What do you think? What distances do Star Wars ships typically fight at? What's the maximum range and the maximum effective range of a turbolaser? Let me know all of that and more down in the comments section. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, this has been Eckhart Slaughter. May the Force be with you.